Hey guys, it's Ramon. It's been a long time, but I'm back. For now.
Are you coming back, Elroy?
I think so. Probably. Maybe.
As you can see from the title, I'll be talking about one of my favorite movies. Probably number one, but who knows, it switches all the time. But I'll be talking about Man of Steel. Eventually,
Maybe.
I'll get around to doing reviews for Zack Snyder's trilogy. A trilogy that means the whole world to me. Those movies being Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and concluding with Zack Snyder's Justice League. There will be major spoilers, obviously, so yeah. If you like the video, like it and let's get to it. Let me give you a little backstory to explain my connection to the movie and why it's extra important to me. Batman has always been my favorite superhero growing up. I had all his toys, merchandise, you name it. If you know me, that's 100% a fact. One of the key cartoons of my childhood is Justice League. I liked Superman, but he was never my guy. I didn't particularly, really care about him. I remember seeing the original Christopher Reeve Superman movies, and then watching the 2006 legacy/sequel Superman Returns. I even still have his toy, to this day. I have to thank my grandpa for showing me and giving me access to all this content. Both him and my mom are why I love all this pulp culture stuff. I always remember the numerous discussions with my grandpa telling me that Superman is his favorite superhero. So, Man of Steel released on June 14th, 2013. I remember that teaser trailer they had for it, and it included the Lord of the Rings soundtrack on it. God, what a trailer. I remember my mom telling me that my grandpa wanted to take me to go see a movie, and I was so excited when I learned it was for Man of Steel. I remember everything about that day. There was just something so special about watching it with him. I was amazed by this movie. That feeling of how you just watched the best thing in the world. And I got to experience it with him. I remember thinking after I got back home that this was the apex of superhero movies. And I didn't think it got better than that. And I still believe in that 100%. So a little history about the movie. Development for a new Superman movie started around 2008, after the studios recognized that Superman Returns didn't really work out. Otherwise they would have had a sequel already around the same time. David S. Goyer, who had collaborated with Christopher Nolan on the Dark Knight movies, began talking about a potential modern take on Superman. Many directors were approached until Zack Snyder was set on directing it. So, the man of the talk. Is that a saying? I don't know, but I'm going to keep this line in here anyway. Makes sense to me. Zack Snyder. Snyder. I love him. I think he is one of the best visionary directors of all time. A part of me wishes that he got more love than he does, but then the other part of me doesn't really care because I love his work. I love his takes on these characters. A good question to ask is, what if I was in charge of the DC universe? Would I do exactly what Zack Snyder did? And the simple answer is no. I would probably do a lot of things differently. But I'm fascinated by his take on the DC universe. It's interesting to me. One of my favorite it's one of my favorite things of all time, that this piece of work, being Man of Steel, impacted me in the best ways possible. It's my favorite movie of all time, and it'll probably stay that way for the majority of my life. And the fact that it's a Superman movie and not a Batman movie is insane to my brain. So I said earlier that Snyder is one of the best visionary directors, and yeah, I think that this movie is shot really well, and I think that the fight scenes that we got in this movie are phenomenal. I just love the contrast of fighting between Clark and Zod, because Zod was a general on Krypton, while Clark is just a boy from Kansas. I think Zack Snyder did a great job of showcasing how quick and fluid each strike that the Kryptonians are doing to each other. They're quick and yet they feel so heavy. The scene where it's Clark and Fiora in the IHOP and she just makes him look so weak compared to her is so cool. Fiora as a character is absolutely awesome. I love the use of the camera being shaky during some of the fights. I think it just adds to it, which is, I like it. I really like how this movie is structured. We get an extended sequence of spoilers, Krypton exploding. Then we follow Clark Kent drifting around the world, while flashbacks come into play throughout the movie to get a background of how his childhood was. Diane Lane and Kevin Costner were cast as Clark's adopted parents, and I think they did a really good job. There's a scene where Martha comes to school and has to calm down a little Clark, who is starting to feel his powers grow, and it feels so real and raw. I like how it visualizes how Clark is seeing the world. through his X-ray vision. Unpopular opinion, but I really like the casting of Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent. The scene of him and Clark on the truck and the following scene where he shows him the space pod that he crash landed on is so powerful, telling him that Clark is his son no matter what. Some of my favorite scenes ever. Every time I rewatch this movie, I completely forget how long the Krypton sequence is. I love how Snyder was able to showcase Krypton being this futuristic and beautiful planet. It has that perfect blend of sci-fi that I love. When Jor-El is escaping Zod's men and he just sees the war going on the balcony, the camera shot of the gunshots on the planet looks so beautiful. The way everything Kryptonian related is designed with such grace. The spaceships, weapons, the creature that Jor-El flies on. I want to give a special shout out to the costume designer of the movie, Michael Wilkinson. The costuming for just the Kryptonian stuff alone in this movie is just out of this world. The special effects that went into General Zod's armor is insane, as no physical version of it was actually made. The design of the under armor that the Kryptonians use is so freaking cool. The texture has a medieval chainmail type look to it, and again it just looks beautiful on everyone who wears it. I've never been a fan of the red underwear look for Superman, so I am happy that he doesn't have it in this movie, and that we're finally getting away from it, I think. So I'm happy that he doesn't have it. I should probably talk about the Man of Steel himself. Henry Cavill was cast to portray Superman, and I mean, come on. I love Henry's portrayal. I think he gives such a great performance of a man who could literally change the fate of this world, and the challenges of what the right thing to do is. With this movie being a retelling of his origin, we see through the use of flashbacks of how his childhood was, and I really like how this was done. I already mentioned earlier, but the scene where he's in the classroom and his vision just goes berserk was so interesting to see. I mean, I know this is a comic book property. It's just cool to see how this overwhelming feeling of power flowing through you is done. And I love how this scene is later mirrored when General Zod is first exposed to the Earth's sun directly. I won't get into Henry Cavill briefly coming back as Superman and then the next month getting completely axed. It was a roller coaster of emotions, and yeah, I won't get into it. Basically, I love you, Henry Cavill, and you'll always be my Superman. So thank you, Zack Snyder, for casting him in the role. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Clark finally puts the suit on, and Russell Crowe as Jor-El explains exactly why Clark is different from humans. And to say that this is one of my favorite scenes is an understatement. Superman starts super jumping around and attempts to fly, and the emotions that are on Henry Cavill's face are so sweet. I don't like when people say that Superman isn't happy in this movie and that a Superman movie needs to be happy. I think that last statement is a bit unfair because, yeah, Superman is a beacon of hope and fights for truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. And I think that Henry as Superman does that. It's just that this particular take on Superman isn't supposed to be a jolly good time and chuckles here and there. There are sometimes hard decisions that need to be made, and they're not happy. This take on Superman, which will be explored even more in Batman v Superman, is how this godlike being is dangerous, and should he even be around. Okay, back to the scene. After Clark fails at flying, Jor-El says in a voiceover, "You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. They will race behind you. They will stumble, they will fall, but in time, they will join you in the sun, Cal. In time, you will help them accomplish wonders." God, dude. Then the most epic / beautiful scene of Superman flying back into the sky, and he flies around the world. The smile on Superman's face, and the accompanying music by Hans Zimmer in the background. This is the perfect scene. This is just one of my favorite superhero things of all time, and I love it. Let's talk about the music for this movie. First off, before I get to the score, I love the use of Seasons by Chris Cornell in it. Being... Jesus Christ, that's not fair, man. Hans Zimmer composed the score for Man of Steel, and God, I love it. Okay, yes, the John Williams 1978 Superman theme is iconic, and I love that theme too. I think that perfectly encapsulates Superman, and I will never disrespect that theme. In an interview with Collider, Hans Zimmer had this to say, which basically sums up how I feel following the John Williams theme. "How do you think I feel? Hang on, I got the double whammy. There's no more masterful composer than John Williams. Let's just declare the truth here. There is nobody better than John. One of his best scores, of course, was the original Superman film. But the theme that Hans Zimmer composed is one of my favorite pieces ever. Not just for superhero movies, but of all time. There are basically two themes that Superman has for this movie. One being a very somber and humble piano theme for when Clark is having a very emotional moments, like with his parents. And then number two, he has the epic heroic theme with lots and lots of percussion instruments, which I love. The sense of a newfound purpose that plays during Superman's first flight is outstanding. I think that this is as good as it gets for superhero music. It's superb. Get it? Superb. Okay. The scene where Superman is trying to destroy the world engine, the music is just plain beautiful. The tension of trying to avoid all of those wacky tentacles is so cool. I love how they look and the designs of it. The sound design in this movie is also impressive. From Superman's sound when he flies, anything Krypton related, including those tentacles I just mentioned. The sounds that both the world engine and the Black Zero machine make live rent-free in my head. The laser beams coming from the eyes too, it's just so impressive to me the way it sounds. Along with this being my favorite movie of all time, I have to give it to Michael Shannon as General Zod. This is one of my favorite villain performances ever. Michael Shannon as General Zod is so formidable, yet he tries to make you believe what he's trying to accomplish is the right thing to do. Like terraforming Earth to become a new Krypton. It's such a wacky plot, but his passion and drive to achieve it is so cool. Obviously I don't want him to win, but man, Zod wants it. I think the standout scene from Michael Shannon is when the world engines are destroyed. He kneels on the dust of what could have been a new chance for his people of Krypton, and he gives one of my favorite little monologues ever. Look at this. We could have built a new Krypton in this squalor, but you chose the humans over us. I exist only to protect Krypton. That is the sole purpose for which I was born. And every action I take, no matter how violent or how cruel, is for the greater good of my people. And now, I have no people. My soul, that is what you have taken from me. Do I think that this monologue is Oscar worthy? I mean, probably not, but it's Michael Shannon's performance in that scene that just sells it for me. The rest of the cast is so freaking good as well. Lois Lane, played by Amy Adams, is so good. She has amazing chemistry with Henry Cavill. The scene where Superman surrenders himself and talks to Lois in the interrogation room is so good. Such good chemistry.
What's the S stand for?
It's not an S. On my world, it means hope.
Well, here it's an S.
And I may talk about being the world's greatest detective with her finding out who Clark was that easily. Lawrence Fishburne plays Perry White and just kills every scene he's in. And Christopher Maloney plays Colonel Hardy, and I really like his character. And the awesome back and forth he has with Fiora. And I love that line that they say to each other.
A good death has its own reward.
A good death is its own reward.
I won't talk about the Metropolis fight until a future Batman v Superman video, because this event goes hand in hand with both films. But the minor thing I love about this fight is all the collateral damage that Zod and Superman cause. Not that I'm happy with civilians dying, but it just feels so real with how badly these two superhumans would leave a city after fighting. Again, you have to think about how these are some of the strongest beings of this universe. They are going to cause a huge mess fighting. I think the biggest moment that a lot of people either like or don't is the death of General Zod. I personally see it as a necessary act for Superman to do. I kind of think that the situation is like the trolley dilemma. Either one person is killed or multiple are going to be killed. And Superman had to kill Zod. It was like the only way to end it. And the acting from Henry Cavill when he just lets out a huge scream for what he did, I'll never get over it. Of course, this movie also has one of my favorite endings ever. What are you going to do when you're not saving the world? Asks Martha Kent. The backing score for this is phenomenal. One of my favorite musical pieces ever from Hans Zimmer. I freaking love how the Kents knew Clark was going to change the world. Seeing the kid Clark with his red cape, the shots of Clark heading to the Daily Planet and Perry White introducing him to everyone, and Lois Lane saying to him, "Welcome to the planet," and that damn smile. Man of Steel. Directed by Zack Snyder. God, I love it. I love it. I love it. It's such a simple ending, just seeing Clark ready to start this new chapter. We don't need a post-credit of something coming, it's just that. Like what the title of the track is. What are you going to do when you're not saving the world? It's like poetry, it rhymes. Okay. Anywho, to wrap things up, I love this movie. I think that this is one of the best comic book movies made. I have learned so much from it. I love the cast, direction, and story of it. I think it's all great. It works for me. And I cherish my memories that derive from it with my grandpa. So hey Papa, I hope you liked this video. Thanks for taking me to see one of my favorite movies ever. I will never forget this event ever. Love you. If you guys enjoyed the video, go ahead and like it and subscribe for some more cool stuff, I think. I hope. It'll mean a lot, and yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. I hope.